Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Princeton, where in our open and welcoming community, we live our message of hope, love, justice, and joy. Whether you've joined us here in Channing Hall or you're joining us on Zoom this morning, it's wonderful to be together on this beautiful day. And we extend a special welcome to our visitors. We're so happy that you've joined us. And we invite you to stop by our newcomer table after the service if you haven't already, so that we can get you any information that you'd like about our congregation. And our next newcomer program is next Sunday, August 13th, after worship for an hour. It's called Exploring Unitarian Universalism. It's an introduction to our faith and congregation. It's about an hour, and all are welcome with no sign up needed. Just head over to that newcomer table after worship next Sunday, and we will get you where you need to be. Also coming up Sunday, August 20th is our Blessing of the Animals service. You're invited to bring your animals to the service for a blessing, or if they're the sort that don't travel well, you can bring a picture and we'll bless them that way. And also in that service, we'll say a thank you to our wonderful administrator, Sarah Oderwald, who is retiring after 18 years of service to UU Princeton. It'll be a fun and meaningful service, so come on by and bring your friends and their animals too. And now, as many and as one, let us be in this space of hope and peace. And let us meet this hour with wonder, reverence, and gratitude for the gifts of this time and of one another. Come, let us worship together.
Everybody wants to be Cary Grant. Even I want to be Cary Grant. I have spent the greater part of my life fluctuating between Archie Leach and Cary Grant, unsure of either, suspecting each. I pretended to be somebody I wanted to be until finally I became that person, or he became me, Cary Grant.
And let us join together in the spirit of prayer and meditation. As water falls from cloud to stream to flow through the land, may we too move with gravity and grace through life. May we be at rest and in motion, anchored and alive. May we refresh parched places and grow life abundant. As water, which we are more than anything else, may we feel a kinship with rain and lakes and ponds and oceans. May our bones, our skin, our hearts, our brains sense a oneness with water, and know in that a strengthened foundation, and the cleansing offered by forgiveness, and the freedom offered by fluidity, and the fortitude created by the long wearing of water on rock. Spirit of water and the waters and us, we praise and thank you for that which gives us life, and through which we can bless others in our days and our ties and our free flowing lives. And here in the silence, we offer these, the prayers and meditations of our hearts.
You might not suspect it to look at me, but I am a recovering theater kid. I can't remember specifically the first time I saw a performance on stage. Maybe it was Shakespeare at the great outdoor amphitheater over near Washington's Crossing, which I think was Taming of the Shrew. That doesn't mean anything. Or maybe it was the College Light Opera Company in Falmouth, Massachusetts, a small, creaky, but imaginatively expansive stage set up the hill in the woods just before the landscape falls away to the west at Buzzards Bay. Theater and its offshoots, movies and especially television, were always there for me. People get so surprised when famous actors like Anthony Hopkins or Dan Aykroyd place themselves on the autism spectrum, but I don't find myself surprised at all. Those of us on the spectrum, if we are lucky enough, learn very early the essentials of the acting craft. Mirror what you see, intensely analyze others, suppress your real self when necessary, find the harmony. Because, to be honest, before I was ever a theater kid, I was a musician. Violin at the age of 5, singing in choir at the age of 9. But the two arts are intimately entwined. Both, ideally, involve finding yourself, but then finding your own truth in communion with others. I got really good at that, at least the second part, the communion part. I sang in the Princeton Girl Choir, found my people in the Lawrence Township school music program. Thank you to the Haltmeyers, to Mr. Harbach, to Ms. Niemand. I covered my high school notebooks with quotes from The West Wing, from Dogma, from Quills. I rehearsed my favorite monologues over and over and over so I could practice the feelings I wanted to have. I learned the mirroring part a little bit too well. When I got a senior superlative, my last year in the high school musical, it was The Silent Sweetheart. Find the harmony, even if that means your own melody falls silent. Theater, and now TV, continued to be my solace. Like author Martha Wells says in her great series, The Murderbot Diaries, I got context for what I was feeling from my stories. Stories kept me company without making me necessarily ever interact. This was especially useful when the interactions at my toxic job, in my aging family, gave me overwhelming feelings I couldn't always cope with. Then here comes a time when the mirroring isn't enough, when you have to not shatter the mirror, but find a way through it. Find the harmony. Be confident in your own part in the harmony. This time was 2020. I had learned my craft all too well. I had lost my melody in the harmony, and now I had no music at all. Ironically, it was a tool and a routine that I had learned long before as a theater kid that got me to sing again. A mirror that sent me on a journey rather than a mirror which consumed me. I didn't create Ted Lasso, but the mirror that I found in him, in the character that Jason Sudeikis created, was a doorway rather than an oubliette. I saw myself in Ted, in his need to go to therapy, in his partial ability to finally speak to what he needed rather than what other people wanted. As Archie Leach or Cary Grant, or whichever of them said, I found myself a person that I wanted to be and became them, at least for a little while. The theater kid sees it through.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Once there was a tribe of giants who lived in the far north in the bitter cold. They were rumored to be especially cruel and fierce, and the people who lived to the south of them did all they could to stay away from them. The giants were thought to have hearts of literal stone, and it was believed that if one met one of the giants, they would be quickly killed. However, one day, one of the younger giants was walking around in the south, exploring the world, and he saw a member of the tribe about his age on the other side of the stream. When the member of the tribe saw him, she thought to run and warn her family and friends about this dangerous giant who was nearby, but she saw that the giant didn't seem threatening at all. He wasn't fierce, wasn't cruel, just kind of awkward, and moreover, he seemed to be enchanted by her. So day after day, she would appear at the stream at the same time, and he would too. Eventually, they came to speak to each other and learned about each other's lives. He was clearly in love with her from the beginning, and one day she realized that she loved him back. But she knew that they could not marry if he had a heart of stone. He needed to be more human than that, needed to be able to feel the full range of love and compassion and care and consideration. He also knew that he couldn't offer her what a spouse must, and thus their love could never lead to marriage and a life together. A stone heart couldn't be offered in love to someone else. This story comes from the traditional Winnebago Nation up in northern Wisconsin and surrounding areas, and it is indeed cold up there. I often say that the year that I spent in Minnesota was the 5 coldest years of my life because it seemed like winter would never end. But I'm also not sure I've ever experienced such an exuberant and lovely spring as I did after all that cold and ice and snow. There's a certain hardiness that seems to carry residents through the really cold parts of the year. You just sort of bundle up and move through the cold, tending as needed to neighbor and stranger with a proficient, no fuss compassion that refuses all but the briefest expression of gratitude. I remember being stuck in the snow in a plowed in parking lot. I began to dig my car out and some guy I'd never met came by with a shovel and started helping me. I tried to refuse the help. I could do it myself, but he just sort of ignored me and kept shoveling. And then when my car was free, I saw him move over to another car and start digging that one out too. I thought it was his, but it wasn't. It was just another car that was stuck in the plowed in snow in the parking lot. And when that owner saw us digging it out, he came out and started shoveling too. And then we just kind of moved on, digging out other cars, saying almost nothing to each other as others came outside and started doing the same thing. There was a sort of warmth in those moments, not from anything spoken, for we weren't sharing with each other in that way. And the warmth wasn't just from exertion, although that was considerable. The warmth was in the mutual concern and the collective effort. Something about not being able to control the snow, but being able to join together and clean up after it. The poet Stephen Dunn, who's from Minnesota, captures this in his piece, The Same Cold. The poem reads, "In Minnesota, the serious cold arrived like no cold I'd previously experienced, an in-your-face honesty to it, a clarity that always took me by surprise. On blizzard nights with wires down or in the dead battery dawn, the cold made good neighbors of us all, made us moral because we might need something moral in return. No hitchhiker left on the road, not even some frozen, strange-looking stranger turned away from our door. After a spell of it, I remember zero would feel warm. People out for walks, jackets open, ice fishermen in the glory of their shacks moved to Nordic song. The cold took over our lives, lived in every conversation as compelling as local dirt or local sport. If bitten by it, stranded somewhere, a person would want to lie right down in it and sleep. Come February, some of us needed to scream, hurt ourselves, divorce. Once on Route 23, 30 below, my Maverick seized up, and a man with a blanket and a candy bar, a man for all weather, stopped and drove me home. It was no big thing to him, the savior, just two men, he said, in the same cold." The poem, the shoveling, and the indigenous story lead us to a sense of happiness or contentedness when hearts are with one another. And they lead us away from thinking that the connections must all be in the same way or manifest in the same expression. The romantic connection or the yearning for another between the giant and the maiden is different than people shoveling snow together. And neither is like the connection made in the poem between two strangers when one needs another for survival. That image from Dunn's poem, which is beautiful, becomes even sacred when one considers it an expression of a loving kindness meditation, or in other words, as a loving kindness meditation put in active relational practice. For some, meditation is best when it's kind of active. So actively serving someone else might be the right kind of meditation some of the time. Or maybe for everyone, service is at least sometimes the best meditation. As we often say in our faith, service is our prayer. That's aligned in our very traditional covenants. It has wise, prophetic, Judaic roots, like much of the rich context of our historic covenants. Now, I believe that sometimes prayer really should be our prayer, but sometimes service must be as well. We don't really have to choose one or the other. And sometimes, even when given that choice, we can just choose both. Those loving kindness meditations are rooted in the Buddhist tradition and frequently presented these days in a mindfulness context, but they've also broadened such that they are often multi or interfaith expressions. We do them here sometimes in worship, and they start with an expression of blessing and intention for the self before moving out to others we know and care for, and then to others we don't know, and then to others we know but don't like. And then in some newer expressions, it moves out to bless and show concern for the entire ecosystem or cosmos. Rhonda V. McGee, who wrote The Inner Work of Racial Justice, Healing Ourselves and Transforming Our Communities Through Mindfulness, describes it this way. Gradually through this practice, we are expanding our hearts and widening our circles of concern. We are building the muscles for the flow of acceptance and peace that ripple beyond those about whom we care the most. And we are walking a path to the lived experience of equanimity, which will be like a lifelong support as we look more deeply inside ourselves and as we engage with others, moving more completely into the work of transformational social change. McGee is urging us gently in the way of most mindfulness people to expand our hearts beyond ourselves and those we already care for, to open our hearts to people we don't know and to people we do know, but kind of wish we didn't. She's setting up that journey as the one that leads to social change, from self to loved ones, to strangers, to enemies, and then often to everyone. This leads to this slow opening, this mirrors this slow opening of the heart, which is a gradual process that requires patience and practice. And for those more comfy with introspection than engaging the world, the first parts are going to be easier. Focus on the self and the people you love. And for those who are more comfy engaging the world and looking into one's inner self, the later stages might be easier, the ones that involve strangers and the world. But balance, growth, and the equanimity she speaks of require that we not rest in our comforts, but stretch into the unknown. Our preferred path can stay that way, and it always will, but opening our hearts will necessitate us trying new things that will also help us better understand one another. Instead of becoming frustrated when our approaches differ, we'll know their value because we'll have practiced the humility to explore their disciplines. Most of us find it difficult to send good intentions to people we don't like. Maybe they hurt us, maybe we hurt them, and that weighs heavily on us. Maybe there is guilt and regret and the decidedly unhappy parts of life wrapped up in those memories. My advice in this practice is to not start with the person that you can't stand the most. Pick someone you just don't like a little bit and wish them health and happiness. Don't start with the most evil person you can imagine. Start with the person who just cut you off in traffic and send them a smile in your heart. Work that muscle, as McGee describes it, and you may be able to lift heavier down the road. But even then, if you're thinking of someone who you really don't like, possibly for a good reason, you don't have to go overboard and send them all the holy light in your heart or whatever you can imagine. Just send a flicker of warmth. Go slow, be patient, at your own pace, and make small moves that will add up to larger transformation. Whether we're trying to open the heart and grow the soul or expand justice and transform society, it starts small and then grows. It starts in the heart and then among a few and then among more and more and more. And that's what becomes sustainable. It continually connects us with others in larger and larger circles. Our hearts widen in this process, becoming richer in perspective and more embracing in compassion. Our hearts become more diverse. They become more at ease with change and more optimistic about what our collective efforts can accomplish, even when the news is bad. They know a collective strength that will get us through the moment. A happy heart is one connected with others in joy and rest and work and effort. A happy heart is not happy solely of its own accord, for much of its happiness comes from beating as one with larger life. It beats as though a sleeping cat purrs on its chest even when the cat is elsewhere. It beats as though a drumbeat of justice is playing even if the instruments are silent. It beats in a joyful dance even when no music is playing. It beats with affection for loved ones who are long gone. It beats throughout it all as itself and in rhythm with others, of strength and joy and happiness, and indeed of love for the self, of love for others, of love for the stranger, even one day of love for the enemy. And most of all, with love of life, which is good and true. Life is a blessing for which we should be happy in our hearts and in our shared heart. And with practice, it beats in common rhythm of that gratitude more and more often. I think happiness is how that story about the giant and the maiden by the stream, and the wise ones told of an ending in which the maiden prayed to a spirit to turn the giant's heart from stone to flesh so that they could marry. The spirit does that, so she saves him. Her love turns the giant with a heart of stone into a man of flesh and blood, because love is that strong, and in the spirit in that story is that good. God and love are that strong and good to turn a stone into flesh so that love in the end wins. And in the end, love wins. In our tradition, however, we are already of that love. It was originally blessed into each of us and will be with us for every breath of our lives. We've never not been made in that love, and we never will be. But perhaps the story does show us how others can help us remember that and can help us learn it anew. The love of another can fill our heart such that it beats with more life and purpose. And not just the romantic love of kids dating near a stream, all kinds of love. Love for self and neighbor and stranger and enemy and the world. Love for the spirit that breathes through us. Love for the ancestors who continue to implore us to live full, happy lives of hope, love, justice, and joy. The happy heart is of flesh, not stone, although sometimes we can forget that. And when we do, it is not a spirit that will transform us, but a community that will save us by reminding us of joy, caring, passion, and of sometimes picking up a shovel and working together. May it be so, and amen. And at the end of our hour, we extinguish our chalice, knowing that its light carries us until we gather again. Go forth grateful for the moments before you, the breath within you, the people among you, and the Spirit guiding you toward lives of greater love and kindness. And go forth knowing that you are held always and always with everyone else by that great love of no beginning and never ending. Go in peace, and amen.